Hello and welcome to Video Revealed. I'm Colin Smith. Let's look at lens distortion fixes in both Premiere Pro and Photoshop. More and more people today are shooting on GoPros, or shooting on drones, or shooting a lot of video with wide-angle lenses or fisheye lenses, and you need to correct that. And both Premiere Pro and Photoshop have the ability to fix distorted video. The only trade-off here is it has to scale the video. So a lot of times you'll see a smaller frame inside that frame. Let's have a look. Okay, I've got 3 videos here, and they're shot with different levels of distortion. And to affect them, I'll go to my effects controls and open up my presets and open up lens distortion removal. And there are 2 categories here, DJI and GoPro. I'm going to open up the GoPro setting for this one and just use Hero 2 on this. And they're all using the same effect. They're just different presets. So it's not as if there's one effect for GoPro and one for DJI. They're all using the same effects. Let's go look at this closer. So I'm going to grab my 1080 wide and drag this on, and you'll instantly see a change. In the effects control panel, you'll see an effect has been added, and that's the lens distortion effect. And the name here was just added when someone saved the original effect. And there are several choices over here. The big one is the curvature. And on this particular lens distortion preset, the curvature is set at -29. If I reset that, that's 0, which is nothing. And if we move that down, -29, then you'll see the results. There's no difference to typing that number in or choosing the preset. Now, if that looks good to you, then you're done. But sometimes if the plane of the lens versus the subject matter was a little bit off, then you might have different distortion on different parts of the screen. So for that, we can change the vertical and horizontal decentering. So watch what happens to this. Let me grab a shot that's like that. And the decentering is going to move that off from one side to another. It's also going to add more distortion, but it might be that one thing that helps with the distortion fix you need. And the same with horizontal. Again, that's popping that up and down. So that's the horizontal decentering. I'll take that back to 0. And this one happens to be open. I mean, each one of these has a slider. So you can either type the number, drag on top of the number, or move the slider. Now there's also vertical prism and horizontal prism effects. Let's look at the difference here. And you can see how that's shifting. Same thing here, the horizontal prism. And when you do push this a little bit too far, you'll notice that we start to show some of the bottom here. And if we turn off fill alpha, this is actually black. If we turn on our transparency grid, you'll see it's transparent. The distortion of the image is actually distorting the physical size of the frame. So it's not a rectangular frame anymore. It's distorted. And once it's past a certain point, you can see the background. So if you don't turn on fill alpha, then you'll get a transparent background, which will show you a track underneath this. Or if there's nothing there, it's going to show you black. This just gives you the option that if you have to distort the frame that way, you can choose to fill it in with a different color. So I could fill this alpha, pick a different color, and have it fill that way. I could also pick a color inside the frame itself. You could also go up to the motion settings and change the overall position. So I could move that down and increase the scale. So if I turn that on and off, you'll see what that does. So it's a combination of the motion settings and the lens distortion settings. You could, I'm holding down the Control key on Windows, Command on Mac, I could select both of these, right click, and save this as a preset. So 2 things saved in this preset. That's great if you shot all day with that same camera and you don't want to do the same 2 settings on every single one. Save both of those in one preset, select all of them on the timeline, draw it in, and you're done. Okay, let's look at the other one here, which is the DJI. And you can see some distortion. As that camera moves below the center, you see that dip down, and above the center, it starts to distort up. So let's open up the DJI and let's stick 1080 on that one. And again, you notice right away that the scale has changed as a distortion, but it really fixes that. I'm going to turn that effect on and off, and you can see it fixes that distortion nicely. Let's talk about keyframing this. So I want to show you in this particular video, there's a massive amount of distortion as they go by this part of the trail, of the bridge. You can see as they enter the bridge, there's massive distortion here. So I'm going to go back and do the same as before. Let's stick the GoPro on there. And then when I get to this area at the end, I'd like a different kind of distortion. Well, we can keyframe the distortion throughout. Let's have a look. So we're going to change the curvature setting. So right now this is set at -24. If you click on the stopwatch here, it's set a keyframe at that point for that level of distortion. So if we go back over to when we enter the bridge, and play around with this a little bit more, so I'm going to set keyframes for all of these, and then when we get to this point here, I'm going to set those back, and I can reset those just by clicking on the reset, reset, reset. So now if we watch this, we got 2 levels of distortion here. And you can't see, because it interpolates between the 2 settings, you can't see where it changes. So that's lens distortion fixing inside Premiere Pro. Let's go look at video in Photoshop. I'll open up the same video. And the first thing Photoshop will do is open the timeline down here on the bottom. And we can zoom in and zoom out and do many of the same things in Premiere Pro. A couple of things to notice is that this is playing back at a resolution of 50%. And remember that Photoshop isn't a video editing program, so it's not as efficient in the way that it plays back video. So by default, it's going to turn everything down to 50%. Now, before we add the lens correction effect to this video, you have to turn this into a smart object. If you don't, the lens correction effect will only happen on 1 frame and will be completely confusing. So let's go over to the layers, right-click on the right-hand side, not on the thumbnail, right-click over here, and choose Convert to Smart Object. And you'll notice it changes slightly, and then we get this setting in our properties where we can convert this to linked. By default, when I open this video in this Photoshop file, it's going to embed that, so we can convert that to a linked file. I don't really need to do that, but it's just worth understanding. Okay, in the filter menu, there's a lens correction setting. If you're lucky, down here in the bottom left, maybe Photoshop knows what lens and camera model this is. Again, Photoshop is mostly for still images. So if you've shot something with a camera and you're using lens distortion, there's a really good chance there's metadata in the image that Photoshop will understand. It even understands my Galaxy S8. So when I bring that in as a still image, Photoshop will recognize the lens and fix that distortion. But for video, there's less chance of that metadata being in the video itself about the camera and the lens. I'll show you how to pick that in a second. One other thing I want to mention is Adobe does have a complete set of tools for you to build your own lens profile. And I'll put that information in the description. But I'm going to just choose it over here on the right-hand side. You can see a large description of large amount of choices. I'm going to choose GoPro. And the camera model, I'm just going to choose Hero. And you can see there's our lens distortion. And when I click OK, it applies that as an effect. And you can see that down here, there's the lens distortion. So I can turn that on and turn that off. And if I hit the space bar, it's going to play the video. And you'll see that Photoshop does not play that back very well. To export that out, you can click on this little flyout menu in the timeline and choose Render Video. Or you can go to the File menu, Export, Render Video. They're the same thing. Here it will show you where you're exporting the video, and you have a choice of either image sequence, but for video, leave it on Media Encoder and leave it on the high quality 1080p. Hit render and it's going to export that out. Photoshop's lens correction is a little bit better than Premiere Pro's. So for general work, I'd probably just leave it in Premiere Pro. For anything really special, why not give Photoshop a try, render that out and compare that. All right, so to all you folks out there that are shooting with your GoPros and DJI and a bunch of your drones out there, or just wide angle lenses, you now have lens distortion fixes and a couple of choices. All right, if you found this informative, and if you're new to Video Revealed, take a moment to subscribe. You want to support us some more like our awesome folks over on Patreon, please join us over there for as little as $1 a month. And we now have PayPal donation right on the front of our channel. Thanks to everyone who's supporting Video Revealed. I really do appreciate it. We go to very great lengths here to give you the best tutorials, so it's nice to see your support. Till next time, I'm Colin Smith, and it's my job to get you looking your best.